Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second session of tonight's PEO 2022 Council Elections All Candidates meetings. My name is Arthur Sinclair, and I will be the moderator for tonight's discussion. Tonight, we will hear from the candidates for Vice President. The two candidates participating in tonight's meeting are Gregory Wojcik and Michael Chan. The electronic meeting with the candidates via webcast enables voters to learn more about the candidates and PEO issues, so more of them will vote. Voters were able to pose questions online in advance of this discussion. We'll try to get as many of those questions as possible. In accordance with the approved protocol, for the all-candidate meeting, I, as moderator, may shorten the questions and not read out preambles to questions, may select any question, may remove offensive and duplicate questions, and may ask questions not on the platform. Each candidate will be provided 2 minutes for opening remarks. I will then direct a question to a candidate. That candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question. After the candidate has responded, the remaining candidate will have 1 minute to address the first candidate's response to that question. Following the question period, the candidates will have 90 seconds each for closing remarks. The order of speakers was determined by a draw earlier this evening. The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast do not necessarily reflect the views of PEO and are the responsibility of the candidates. So, without further delay, let's get started with opening remarks. The first candidate for Vice President is Gregory Wojcik.
Good evening, and thank you all for tuning into our webcast. I'm kind of disappointed not to see Barry back in his usual chair as moderator. I'm sorry he didn't land that gig to replace Alex Trebek on Jeopardy! My name is Greg Wojcik, and I've been active in PEO affairs for over 2 decades. I've served 2 terms on council. I was PEO's executive analyst in 2011 and 12, and I also chaired the powerful communications committee during a period of great change at PEO. Like you, I am concerned how recent councils have got so off track. They've been obsessed with governance. It clearly is a solution in search of a problem. We've been hiring expensive outsiders to remake our profession instead of tapping the wisdom and experience of our own volunteers. Peer review and the work of our committees are being sidelined. Self-regulation is an effective, visionary process, and it protects the public interest. It has done so brilliantly for 10 decades. It's unique to Canadian professions, but certain forces recently have been moving to take away this right from us and to disregard member input. I will continue to fight to preserve a democratic, modern, adaptable, and visionary PEO, which concurrently serves the public interest and the interest of the profession. More than ever, it's time for fresh perspective on council.
The second candidate for Vice President is Michael Chan.
Good evening. I have to go very fast. And for those who doesn't know me, I'm Michael Chan. I'm one of the limited few, if not the only, staff volunteer who is experienced in all aspects of PEO. As Vice President, one must have an in-depth knowledge of the entire PEO operation, which include council, committee, chapter, and staff. Following my continuous involvement in nearly 20 years as staff and volunteer in PEO. In the chapter, I have 8 years as PEO chapter manager, and I was executive of Willow Thornhill chapter. In the committees, as a volunteer, I'm an ACV Advisory Committee of Volunteers as a chair and over 10 years of members. Finance as 1 year as vice chair and 1 year as chair. Governance liaison, I started the GLP 16 years ago, and I'm a member of the GLC. Legal tribunal, I'm a member of the registration and Discipline Committee for over 6 years. Council, 8 years on council as staff member, 3 years on council as LGA, Lieutenant Governor appointee, 2 years on executive committee, 1 year on the newly formed GNC, Governance Nominating Committee. I was deeply involved in this three-pillar transformation process, which is involved with organization, regulatory reform, and governance, which is the most important task facing PEO now, and the 2 years governance roadmap. Apart from working for PEO, I also work for other local committees, especially the Chinese committee. As a result of my over 20 years volunteer work in PEO and the committee, I was honored to receiving the following awards: the OPEA Citizen Award, Member of the Order of Honor, Outstanding Volunteer by Mayor Mao Lastman, Toronto Police and Ontario Volunteer for 20 years, Federal MP Canada 150 medals, Engine Canada Certificate of Fellowship, FEC.
Thank you very much. So first question, just to speak about yourself. What special skills, experience, or ideas do you bring to enhance the governance of PEO? The first order of questions will go in the same order as the introduction, and we'll rotate through in terms of first and second. And that first question goes to Gregory Wolchuk.
Well, one thing that I think is unique in my background is I've studied both psychology and communications in university. I've taken 6 courses in total. I've run twice for Toronto City Council, so I know how to do politics. And believe me, what we do at council is politics. I have decades of experience on various committees. I've going back to when I was about 17 years old. So I know my way around committees and councils and boards, and I have a vision of where we need to go in this profession. So I think my skills speak for themselves.
And to Michael.
Well, I follow my principles, understand my capabilities, strengths, and my ambition, never shy away from a problem, run towards it, deliver real results, taking actions, making progress, showing the way, and getting things done. So I had a lot of experience in PEO, especially this last 3 years where the PEO is starting this transformation. I was deeply involved. So I know what's going on. I know what needs to be done. And this year and the next year, which if I'm elected, will be the most important, because we're going to get the whole thing, the PEO, transformed to a governance type of board.
Thank you. And next question, continuing about yourself. As someone seeking an important leadership position on council, what do you think makes you a good leader? First question goes to Michael Chen.
Well, as I just said, those principles I follow, I was using those principles for my work and volunteer. For my work, since I graduated as an engineer some 35 years ago, I was a manager. And from then onwards, and the balance of my career's work, I always moved up the level, going to management work. I'm leading a group of people and rewarded as a good leader with promotions, going to leader. My 8 years as chapter manager, I reshaped and designed the entire chapter system. As a volunteer, I did a lot of volunteer work for the outside communities. I was president of FCCP, president of Chinese Cultural Center, chair of Toronto Police CPLC. The same as my job, I was always appointed and voted to leader positions. So with my extensive leadership position in both my day job and volunteer work and my achievements, I think I have achieved a status of being called a good leader.
Thank you very much. And over to Gregory.
Well, I have extensive knowledge and experience with PEO going back 24 years. It goes back to the days of Engineers for Engineers, which was formed by Pat Quinn and many other prominent people that you would recognize. I've served on council twice, and I was the executive analyst reporting directly to the president of PEO. I have experience as a leader or chairman in other boards. Way back to my student days, I was on the Students' Union of Ryerson as the director of communications. And more recently, I was president of the Etobicoke Historical Society. With the help of a hand-picked board, we turned that organization totally around. Good leadership is the key, and I believe I have those qualities.
Thank you. Next question to Gregory, moving to the organization of PEO. What do you see as the most important issue facing PEO today? What would you do to address this issue?
Well, I think people know me well enough to know that I feel the most important issue is preserving our self-regulated profession. This was created in 1922 by a visionary provincial parliament, and it's worked exceptionally well. And we're tinkering with this successful formula at our peril. That's absolutely number one. I will add, there's another important issue, and that is the relevance of the profession. Right now, PEO is not regulating a whole bunch of new disciplines that are real hardcore engineering. So we're missing the boat on that. So I'm really saying there's two really important issues, and I will fight to bring those forward.
Over to Michael Chan. What do you see as the most important issue facing PEO, and what would you do to address it?
Well, the most important issues facing PEO nowadays is our transformation, what we call the tri-pillar transformation, which we are transitioning the PEO in three areas: the operation, the regulatory reform, and the governance. And for the last 3 years, the council have been, and the operation, the staff are busy transforming to this new thing so that we are ready for all future endeavors. So these three things which we've been spending the last 2 years on is very important. And then we have 1 more year to go, and we should complete this 2-year roadmap and transforming PEO to a real governance type of board. And for those that are involved in the last 3 years, will be at a loss of what to do if they come in to PEO, because this is a continuous big effort.
Thank you. The next question to Michael. Building on what we said, what weaknesses, if any, should PEO seek to improve in its role as a regulator or in its governance model?
Well, the most important thing is the governance, so that we can separate the operation from council. In the past, council tend to be doing the micromanagement, giving instruction to staff, confusing the issue. And the council has been spending all the time micromanaging operation, which is not achieving, we're not having a great success. So the biggest job that we're doing in the council approves that, is to transform completely to the governance type of council, which will separate the operation, let the register do all the operation work, and the council do the direct and control.
Thank you. And over to Gregory. What weaknesses, if any?
Well, first of all, I have to respond to what my friend has just said. I think we've swung too far over to the other side. We have the situation where staff is encroaching on what I would call policy. And we also have outsiders who are not even engineers and not part of this self-regulated profession dictating how our profession should be structured. And I take offense to that. I don't think that's a good thing for a self-regulated profession. Now, as for our weaknesses, well, I think we need to have practice standards. We're not good enough at doing that. We need whistleblower protection, and we need to make full use of our volunteers and our committees. We're not doing that. And the other thing we're not doing is we're not regulating new disciplines. We're just fixated on these original 5 or 6 disciplines. So we have weaknesses, and they need to be addressed.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to ask a pretty broad question. It's a quick one. Goes first to Gregory. Is how would you define PEO's mandate?
Well, it's not up to me to define PEO's mandate. That's in the Act. And, I'm even asking why this question is being asked constantly. When I was on council 2 years ago, they were putting up these posters on the walls saying association or regulator ? I find that offensive. I mean, we're not in a Korean re-education camp. The council knows what its mandate is. It's defined in the Act. I can actually read the definition. The principal object of the association is to regulate the practice of professional engineering and to govern its members, holders of certificates of authorization, holders of temporary licenses, holders of provisional licenses, et cetera, in accordance with the Act, the regulations, and the bylaws, in order that the public interest be served and protected. That's our mandate.
Thank you. And to Michael, how would you define PEO's mandate? Your response?
As Greg said, throughout the year, there's a lot of way of defining PEO mandate. We hire this external governance body to help us to change a governance type. And I would define it is to become a professional modern regulator that deliver on the statutory mandate and is supported by governance culture that consistently make decisions that serve and protect the public interest. And council will be a governance type board.
And is there anything PEO can or should do to enhance its public interest protection mandate? That goes first to Michael.
Well, first of all, we have to put our house in order, which is what we are doing now. We are doing these 3 tripera transformation, doing the operation, the regulatory, and the governance. By putting a house order, we'll be ready to do a good job and let our members know and be more transparent.
Thank you. And to Gregory?
Well, again, my answer is that I think we're just heading in the wrong direction at approaching this problem. I'm actually not going to comment further on that question. I'll address it in subsequent questions.
Sure. All right, so the next question goes to Greg, and I will jump into this one. You've had these questions, and for everybody who are watching, a lot of the questions were provided. I wanted to ask this one because I think it would give an opportunity for. In March of 2020, PEO Council approved a new governance roadmap, and in November 2020, Council approved a time work plan to implement that roadmap. Please highlight what new governance directions are most important to you as a prospective counselor.
Well, this is kind of a loaded question because it assumes that we all approve of this governance roadmap that was passed. I note that this was never presented to the membership for discussion and or approval. Again, if we are a self-regulated profession, a major change such as being conducted underway has to involve our 84,000 members. We can't just dictate to them how things are going to be changed. You know, the governance roadmap is based on the Caton report, which I think was seriously flawed. This is a fellow who I believe doesn't understand self-regulated professions. He comes from England, and there were a whole bunch of things I didn't like when I saw it. One of the things it does is it takes away power from the council. And I believe council is the central organization here, and we need to preserve that power.
And over to Michael.
Well, we've been trying to do the things ourselves for a long time, and we've been criticized by OSPI, by CEO, by other people. So then, to do a right job, we hire these external consultants to help us to do our job. The governance module is proposed by this external consultant, which have been, well, we cannot consult all the members to make the change, otherwise we'll never get it done. So this roadmap has been passed to council approved it, and this is a 2-year roadmap. And we will following this roadmap. By that, we're going to transform to a governmental board, which we are ready to take in any challenges and things. And the transparency, yes, we executive committee look at the proposal, then we have plenary sessions, then we'll go to council and have council to approve the zoning.
Thank you. Next question to Michael. Pretty broad. What do you see as your role as councillor? That is a member of the board of directors in fulfillment of the PEO mandate.
Well, first of all, you have to take part in a council meeting. You have to be active so that you are involved in the whole decision making of the cycle. Also, to be able to actively participate in council, you have to know what's going on. So, for somebody coming in towards the end of the roadmap and thing, it's kind of difficult to jump in. So for me, I have advantage because I was involved in the last 2 years and continue the thing. I was in the executive committee and I was in the GNC committee, which I followed the whole thing. So for me, it will be an advantage and will be easier for me to follow, to take part.
Thank you.
Well,
Gregory?
Yeah, I kind of object to being characterized as a mere member of a board of directors. And this is the way we're headed, where we're just this faceless organization that issues edicts and direction from on high down to the grassroots. That's not a self-regulated profession. And the way I look at it, those of us who are elected to council are answerable to the people who voted us in there. And we have about a third of our council that's appointed. I myself was an appointee back in 1997. And, we never got any direction from government. And we never reported to government. So I don't even know why we have LGAs. I know Michael was an LGA. I myself was. And I think the role of a counselor is to build the profession. That's it in a nutshell. And I just think we're headed in the wrong direction.
Thank you. So next question I'll give to Gregory, and I'm going a little off the script here because the term self-regulation has come up a lot. So I was wondering if you would be able to both give me, in your own words, Gregory, to you first, how do you define self-regulation?
Well, first of all, I want to start by saying self-regulation is unique to Canada. I think there's Delaware and Australia, they have versions of it. It's really unique and it works very, very well. What the government envisioned back in 1922 was it was establishing a covenant where it handed off the responsibility for managing the profession to the people who belong to that profession, with the proviso that we must protect the public interest. We've done that brilliantly for 10 decades. So, it's pretty straightforward, really. Self-regulation means the members direct what's going on through voting and through input from chapters, which we're not getting enough of. We had the Start 1 and Start 2 documents back around 2000. They got shelved. They were valuable input from the members. We need to broaden how we make our decisions.
Thank you. Michael, your response? Definition of self-regulation?
Profession, there are two ways of governing professions. One way is by a government, which they will establish a department, and then they will do all the governance through this department. The other one is self-regulation, which is us, which a lot of the places in the world are doing that, is we ourselves form our organizations, we ourselves do our regulations, we ourselves will organize, and the most important thing is to protect the public. So this is it's very difficult to do a good self-regulation without good governments. So we need a good governance, and the two Quebec and BC already have trouble. The government start intervening and taking back. So we have to be very careful when we do self-regulation that we have to be transparent and we have to protect the public as the first interest.
Thank you. Oh, I want to give credit to a lot of the online questions. Generally speaking, there's a number of questions online that revolve around the implementation of mandatory continuing professional development. And so I'll just open as an open-ended question. I'll ask, what is your opinion and position on PO and implementation of mandatory continuing professional development? That first goes to Michael.
Well, I think PIC is very important per se, with the exception of PO, all the other constituent associations have the self this PIC. The most important thing about this PIC is number one is we will improve ourselves. We will update ourselves so we are current with the world. And second thing, with this PIC, without the PIC, we don't even know what we have. How many mechanical engineers we have, how many electrical engineers we have, we don't know. But with this PIC, we'll be able to see we have this thing. So the thing is, the two important, as I read this, number one is it give us a self-inventory of what we have as an engineer. And second thing is to update ourselves.
Thank you. And to you, Gregory?
Well, I'm not opposed to the idea of PEO polling our members and asking what areas they're practicing in and what competency they feel they have. Look, engineering is different than the other professions. We are so heavily affected by changes in technology that, look, nobody is an expert on this. And the idea that if we take a course or two every year, that suddenly we're going to be competent or experts at something is ridiculous. It's pure window dressing. I believe the individual knows what he or she needs to do to keep current in his profession in order to stay employed or to stay marketable. And I object to the way this whole PEAK program has been advanced. We were promised to have a referendum on this, and council threw that promise out. They said, we're going to impose it. We're going to have the power to do it without a referendum. That's not professional. That's not the way to do things.
Thank you. And now I'm going back to online. There was a number of questions that follow around the theme of licensing, and I'm going to just give you a couple of them and then just broaden the question, give you an opportunity to speak to the concept of licensing. So here's a couple of questions. Do you believe PEO licensing process should have standard timelines? Should PEO use key performance indicators or other similar metrics to evaluate the success of license process? Do you believe licensing process is flawed? What should be done to fix it? Do you believe that there are issues with the current licensing process? And do you believe that the process needs to change? And that first question goes to Greg.
Well, I served briefly on the licensing committee. And yeah, we have some problems with the whole licensing process. It's too cumbersome. It definitely needs to be streamlined. But as for changing how we do our licensing, I don't really see much that needs to be changed there. I mean, we have our standards. People who are eligible for licensing by virtue of their education or their experience, I think those processes are working quite well at PEO. So that's my short answer to that.
Thank you. And over to you, Michael. Do you believe there's issues with licensing or anything need to be changed?
Definitely. So that's what the register is trying to do. We had a process problem. The ERC, the ARC, we have this timing problem. We have mechanization problems. We're still on this manual system paperwork, which takes a long time. So that's what the register now trying to mechanize the whole thing, digitize the whole thing, which will take a while. But once it's done, then we know exactly. Now we still have these piles and piles of documents and backlogs, which are all paperwork, which takes a long time to go through and think. So the two things need to be done. Number one is this mechanization. Number two is the process. We have to look at the process again and see where the backlog, where the problems, and then try to solve them. A lot of processes. My timeout is waiting for the people to come back.
So, talking about the licensing process, I wanted to go to one more question and see if we can squeeze in two more. We'll see how the time works. But this question comes from a software engineer. I'll abbreviate it, but I want to highlight that it comes from a software engineer. And this person says, this is the first time that I have seriously contemplated whether to renew my PEng license. What can PEO do to attract and retain? And that one, first one goes to Michael, excuse me. Thank you.
Well, that's what I'm just trying to, is to mechanize the whole thing, put the whole thing on the system that from the date that the paper comes in, flowing through the whole system to the last product, which is giving out the license. If the whole thing can be mechanized, whole thing that we can go in and see what stage it is, this is what we need. And we're not there yet. So we are doing it, and hopefully shortly we can do that, and then we can speed up the whole process if we know where exactly the things are and what stages the things are.
Thank you. Over to you, Gregory. How would you address this person's question with respect to attract and retain?
Well, I think my friend hasn't really answered the question. The fact of automating the process of licensing, you still have to review the documents, whether they're electronic or on paper. The other thing that I would say is this opens us up. I had this argument with Harry Caton. It opens us up to computer hacking and things like ransomware. PEO, I believe, needs to pay more attention to this area. As for attracting people like software engineers, going to an automated application process is not going to solve that problem. The problem is the relevance. This software engineer in his question said that he doesn't think he's getting good value for his PEO membership. And I would agree with him. If we provide value, we live in a value society. That's why Walmart exists. We have to provide value to people and then they will join.
Thank you. I'm going to try to squeeze in one more question before we go to the closing remarks. So this will be the last question. It's a big question to squeeze into 60 seconds, but I'll give it a shot. And first one goes to Gregory. How should council go about developing a vision for PEO for the next 5 years?
Well, again, developing the vision has to come from the bottom up, not from the top down. In a self-regulated profession, the membership knows what direction this profession has to go in. And we're not doing that. What we're doing is the absolute opposite. Council, these mandarins who sit at this large table, they're hiring outsiders to come and tell us how engineering needs to be changed. And then they're dictating to the profession that this is what you must comply with in order to remain a member. That's the wrong way to develop a vision. Again, I'll refer to the Start 1 and Start 2 documents that, from 20 years ago. The chapters provided terrific information about how PEO should be reformed, and we didn't act on it. So now what are we doing? We're going outside and asking others how we should change. I think that's wrong.
Thank you. And to Michael, how should council go about developing a vision for PEO in the next 5 years?
Thanks for mentioning the Start 1 and Start 2. I was the one that did those two things. Anyway, so council has just produced a 2020 to 2022 strategic plans, which have been developed and will be passed at the next council meeting 544 in November 19. So that will consist of the vision for the next 5 years. So that is a result of gathering all those things that were decided in the past 3 years, including a roadmap, including the 3-pillar transformations. Coupled with that, the strategic plan will be, as I said, will be presented to the 544 council for passing, and that will be the vision for the next 5 years for PEO.
Thank you. So this concludes the question portion of the meeting. Now each candidate, in the same order as the openings, will have 90 seconds for closing remarks. The first closing remarks, Gregory Wojcik, your closing remarks.
Well, I want to thank our members for tuning in tonight. You should be engaged in the election process. It's very important to your profession. I'd like to wrap up with a few final comments. You can find out more about me at gregwojcik.ca. I'm not running for council to fatten my resume. I'm running because I think PEO is headed in the wrong direction. I think the membership's indifference and apathy shows that they agree. 7/8 of them don't bother voting in the elections. The public interest is best served by a profession we all are proud to belong to, one which we all work to make better, one not by one which we grudgingly pay fees to and ignore. In this election, 6 candidates have committed to preserving PEO as a member-directed, self-regulated profession. They are Royden Fraser, Greg Wojcik, Vaj Bande, Agnes Krawczyk, Tim Kirkby, and David Kilgore. I ask that you support us all. we'll do the heavy lifting and get our profession back on track.
Michael Chan, your closing remarks.
Well, thank you for giving me this chance to take part in these all candidate meetings. I hope that you will read my candidate statement in full in the upcoming dimension. That will give you all the things that I've done, all the work that I've done for PEO. And I hope by that you will know my capabilities and my all-round record, my experience PEO, and that I can be trusted to take the position of Vice President PEO, and I'm confident that I can fulfill my role. So I think the recent council have done a good job for the past 2 years, a difficult job, a heavy lifting job to transform PEO so that we are ready to take on the world and be the best governance board in the whole of Canada.
And this concludes tonight's discussion. I would like to thank the candidates for their participation and also to those watching online for their interest in the governance of the engineering profession. I hope you found the meeting to be informative and worthwhile. As a reminder, a recording of the meeting will be on PEO's website for the duration of the election. Thank you again to everyone for participating. And remember, your profession matters. So does your vote. Voting is quick and easy. You can vote on phone or on the internet. Voting opens on January 14th and voting closes at 4 p.m. on February 18th. All information you need is on our website at www.peo.on.ca. Good night.